Hello, friends. Thank you for being here. Each of you makes this channel alive and special. Thanks to your support, I can share stories, thoughts, and emotions that hopefully resonate in your heart. If you have just started exploring my content, welcome. Real-life stories are waiting for you here. Subscribe, like, and share your impressions. Your voice is very important to me. For 15 years, my daughter hadn't bothered to reach out. Then, just like that, she caught wind of my big lottery win, $36 million, and popped up at my villa. She came with her husband and his parents, hauling suitcases. "We're here for our share. We need our own rooms," she said boldly. Her sudden appearance in my life was laughable, and I couldn't help but smile as I decided to finally take action I'd put off for far too long. Flashes of memories hit me as vivid as the bright lights at the Florida lottery office in Tallahassee. There I was, hanging on to a colossal check for $36 million, while officials were shaking my hand and reporters buzzed around, eager for the inside scoop. Each forced grin I gave felt almost painful. "Wilbert," the lottery official practically boomed into the microphone, "what's your first big splurge as Florida's luckiest man?" Balancing the giant check, nearly my height, I said, "Won't go all out. I've spent 67 years living low-key, not about to change that now." A reporter caught my eye, waving for attention. "Any family planning to celebrate with you?" Ouch, that one hit deep. I mustered another smile. "I've got what I need," was all I could say, though inside, the truth was twisted up. I once had a daughter. I say had, because 15 years of silence feels like the past. The press conference dragged on for another 20 minutes with queries about plans, my history, the logistics company I'd spent 40 years at before retiring. Every word I uttered was captured, my name, my face. Thanks to Florida laws, there was no hiding a lottery win. I felt totally exposed, like a treasure on display but without any protection. 3 days went by and then bam, the money hit my account. After taxes had their share, I had $21 million. $21 million. It looked surreal. That night, I just stared at the bank balance on my laptop, all those zeros staring back at me almost mockingly. I knew logistics, planned, managed theft, and yet this was different. Now it was my life on the line, not someone else's cargo. Next day, I swung by First National Bank to meet their financial expert. The guy who greeted me had on a suit costing more than what I used to pay for monthly rent. He led me to a private office, congratulating me first, then soon shifted gears. "With this sum, Mr. Bailey, you'll want protection from opportunists," he warned. "Talk of family claims." I'd enough, cut him short. "I've done risk assessment for 40 years. Let's talk trusts." I must have surprised him since his eyebrows twitched. For the next 2 hours, we hashed out asset protection, investment ideas, and legal safety nets. I jotted notes like I was still tracking big shipments. Split the funds, multiple accounts, create trusts, shield it all, protect the goods. 2 weeks went by, and I'd finalized a $1.2 million purchase for a suburban villa in Orlando. Paid in full. The realtor kept saying how lucky I was. But inside, lucky didn't quite fit. Felt more like I was building a fort I knew I'd be in alone. When moving day came, cold December rain kept pace. My humble belongings looked almost comical in the spacious family-sized rooms. Slowly unpacked, placing everything meticulously. Kitchenware by size, books went onto study shelves alphabetically. Clothes hung in the master closet with perfect gaps between hangers. The house was enormous and silent. I'd pictured retirement once with grandkids around, family dinners, laughter filling the spaces. That dream extinguished 15 years ago. On my first night there, standing on the back porch, I watched the unfamiliar sunset fall over this strange place. This villa cost more than the total earnings of my working life, yet it felt empty. I fished out my phone and opened my contacts. A scroll down memory lane, colleagues from logistics, folks I'd collaborated with for years. I could call them, fill this silence. But then I just put the phone away. What could I say to them? Come see my wealth? Admire my lonely fortress? My daughter Lula stopped calling a long time ago, and I ceased expecting her calls too. Somewhere out there, living her life without me, I'd come to terms with it, or at least convinced myself of that. Just 3 days after I'd settled into my new life at the villa, the TV flickered on with the evening news, just as I was flipping through channels after dinner. Suddenly, there it was, a story about an Orlando retiree hitting it big with $36 million. Imagine my shock seeing my face plastered across the screen, holding one of those giant checks, my name clear as day for everyone to see. The reporter went on about my age, my background, and of course made sure to highlight that insane amount of money I'd lucked into. Thankfully, my address wasn't shared, but my name and face were now out there for everyone. Wanting no part of the spotlight, I switched the TV off and went back to my study. I had some new bookshelves waiting to be used, perfect for organizing my collection of logistics books. So, I spent the afternoon setting things in order: logistics, supply chain management, efficiency guides, all remnants from the career path I'd exited a while back. Putting chaos into order was always my kind of thing. Just as I was engrossed in this task, the doorbell rang at 4:30. I paused, book in hand, puzzled. I hadn't ordered anything and wasn't expecting anyone over. Only my lawyer and the bank were clued into my new address. Who could be at my door? I sneaked a look through the blinds and caught sight of a car I didn't recognize parked in my driveway, bags strapped snugly on top. 2 shadowy figures stood at the door, partially shielded by the porch roof. My heart gave a little jump. With 40 years of making sure shipments reached their destination safely, an unplanned visit after winning the lottery screamed trouble, not a friendly chat. I squinted for a clearer look, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a face I hadn't seen in 15 years. My hand hovered over the doorknob, with a memory flooding over me that I had buried deep. Steeling myself, I drew a deep breath, counted to 3, and opened the door. Lula was there, 38 now, with features that seemed more defined rather than softened with time. Next to her stood someone I knew from old pictures, her husband, Neil. Their luggage sat by their feet, crowding the entrance like they were about to settle in. "Hi, Dad. Surprise," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Thought you could use a bit of company now that you've hit it big." Hearing her call me Dad after 15 years hit hard. The last time she'd used that word, she was 23, and it sounded more like an accusation than anything fatherly. Neil stepped in closer, arms folded, his smile looking rehearsed. "Family's important, especially with a win like this," he remarked. "We're here to help you with all the new management that comes with it." I stood there, door half open, taking in this well-planned reunion. "Saw you on the TV?" Lula chimed in again, her enthusiasm as forced as ever. "We're so proud of you. 36 million, that's huge. We brought our things, figured we'd stay a while, help you get used to this big house. We'd need our rooms sorted for tonight." Not a request, more like a decision already made. My mind raced back to 15 years ago, to my tiny, warm apartment. Lula, at 23, stood in my living room, Neil just behind. She was engaged, wedding plans on her mind. I had saved up $10,000 over 2 years from my logistics manager salary. "We need $50,000, Dad," her younger voice echoed in my head. "For the wedding and Neil's business venture. It's a sure win." I had opened my modest checkbook, showing her the full sum. "This is everything, $10,000. Please take it. It's for your wedding." Her expression turned sour. $10,000? You're kidding, right? Neil needs at least $50,000 for his startup. You make $60,000 a year managing a warehouse. You're nothing. Stunned, I had just stood there, offering everything I had managed to save. She threw the checkbook back, its pages scattering across the floor. "You're more pathetic than I thought," she had sneered, as Neil nodded beside her, backing her fury. They left, slamming the door, and I hadn't heard a word since, Back to the present. Lula's wave brought me back to reality. "Dad, are you even listening? We need to settle in," she pressed on. Snapping out of my thoughts, there she was, smiling a sharp smile, her eyes calculating. Neil was already grabbing their bags, slowly making his way into my foyer without so much as an invite. "You'll get exactly what you deserve," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "Give me a moment to sort things out." Lula grinned even wider and shot a look Neil's way. They seemed to take what I said as a sign I'd given in. Neil's eyes wandered around my living room, checking out the brand-new TV, the sleek leather couch, and the ultra-modern kitchen, almost like he was mentally tacking it all onto a list of things he'd one day claim. There was a lot going on behind those eyes. Not much escaped him. Lula wandered through the house, casually opening every door. "This joint could use a revamp," she chimed in, sounding unimpressed. "Your taste in furniture is a bit off. When's the makeover happening?" Without hesitation, she settled into the biggest guest room. "This one's ours," she announced, then pointed toward the second bedroom. Neil could turn that into his office. I trailed them, keeping my hands to myself and my expression neutral, like I'd learned after years of tough negotiations. You don't show your cards. You gauge everything, but reveal nothing. "We should get that power of attorney sorted," Lula nudged, not very subtly. "You're getting on in age, Dad. You need someone to help with all that dough." "Handled distribution for 40 years, I shot back, each word standing its ground. "I know how to take care of what needs taking care of." Neil's grin twisted into more of a smirk. "Family should look out for family, Wilbert. You've got millions now, and since Lula's your only kid, we ought to discuss splitting those assets in a just way. I've got a few investment ideas to chat about, too." "Appreciate it. I'll think it over," I interrupted, keeping it firm, yet civil. "But right now, I'd prefer some time alone to consider everything." As they settled into their spaces, making themselves all too comfortable, I could hear their voices through the walls, too thin for any privacy. "Looks like he's aged," Neil commented. "Getting a bit fragile," Lula responded. "But don't stress, he'll come round," she reassured. "He always does." They weren't here for me. They came sniffing around because of the $21 million. I walked into my study, shut the door softly, turned the lock, and leaned back against it. Taking a big breath, I worked on calming my thumping heart. I moved to my desk, picked up my phone, and searched. "Estate planning lawyer, Orlando, Florida." Right on top was a highly recommended name, Robert Chen, an expert in estate planning and asset protection. I called up Chen Law Offices, and a professional voice answered, "Robert Chen's office, how may I help you?" "I need urgent advice on inheritances and protecting my assets. Can we make it tomorrow if possible?" I requested. There was a short pause, the sound of keys tapping away in the background. "Mr. Chen has an opening at 9 a.m. Would that work?" "It would suit me perfectly," I confirmed. I hung up, grabbed a fresh notebook, and scribbled "Asset Protection Strategy" at the top of the page. Outside, I could hear Lula and Neil discussing everything from new drapes to their master plan on convincing me to grant them account access. I wrote quickly and precisely, drawing from my 4 decades of managing supply chains, tracking valuables, guarding against theft, blocking off possible inroads. They saw themselves as entitled to things they didn't stick around for 15 years ago, when all I had to offer was love. Now that there was something to gain, they were back. As I wrote down names, dates, documents, mental snapshots of a life momentarily cast in shambles, I recalled the checkbook tossed at my feet, Lula yelling, Neil wearing that calculating look. This was an evidence-gathering mission now, a plan in motion. Experience taught me how to make sure valuable freight reached its intended goals, and now my life's worth, financially and personally, would go exactly where I wanted. Laughter broke through from the other room. "You'll protect what's yours," I silently promised. I continued doing what I'd always done when interacting with Lula and Neil, pretending to handle bank business. They weren't the slightest bit suspicious, too busy measuring for future purchases they expected me to fund. The lawyer was ready to meet me bright and early the following day. Arriving 15 minutes ahead of time, I went up to Robert Chen's office on the 10th floor of a sleek building in downtown Orlando. The air smelled of leather and polish in the waiting room. Row upon row of legal books displayed neatly on the shelves. They stood as a testament to precision. I appreciated that. Right at 9, Chen appeared, glasses glinting as he extended a firm, quick handshake. He gestured towards the plush seat by his spacious desk. "Mr. Bailey, you mentioned having questions about inheritances and assets. How can I be of service to you?" he inquired. I passed him a piece of paper with all my possessions neatly written down. Chen, with his usual calm demeanor, gave it a once-over, nodding as he did. "Florida law is pretty clear-cut, Mr. Bailey," he said, reaching for a legal book on the shelf and turning straight to a marked section. "You have every right to distribute your estate however you want. Your daughter has no automatic entitlement." That was a bit unexpected, but honestly, I felt a wave of relief. "So, she can't just come and say she deserves a piece of the pie?" I asked. "Well, anyone can make a fuss about anything," Chen replied, giving the law book a little tap. "My daughter could dream all she wanted, but she was not getting a penny from me, especially after 15 years of complete silence." I leaned closer. For a decade and a half, she hadn't said a word to me. But then, 3 days after I win big in the lottery, suddenly she's at my doorstep with bags in tow. Chen didn't flinch, but there was a knowing look in his eyes. He knew the deal. We were drafting a will that no top-tier lawyer could overturn. We spent the next hour ironing out every detail. I made my wishes crystal clear. 60% of everything would go to the Florida Veteran Support, and the remaining 40% would land with the Orange County Animal Shelter. These were the folks who really put their backs into helping others. Chen typed everything out and read it back to me, making sure we included a bulletproof clause cutting my daughter, Lula Bailey, out. Not because of any shortcomings on her part, but because I wanted my money to go to causes close to my heart. It was a way to show I wasn't acting out of spite or confusion, leaving no room for any kind of challenge. The will was signed, notarized by Chen's assistant, and safely tucked away in the firm's vault. That was all sorted. Just as I was leaving, Chen passed me a business card. "For discreet checks and whatnot, Marcus Green's your guy," he recommended. Marcus used to be with the police. Now he works privately. I slipped the card into my pocket. Later on, I found myself face to face with Marcus Green at a cafe near my place. The guy was no nonsense, about 52, with sharp eyes and hands folded on the table. "What do you need?" he asked, straight to the point. I spilled the details, her financials, any debts, and how she and Neil were getting by. Marcus nodded and jotted it all down. "Give me 2 weeks, and you'll have a full picture. I might even snag some bank records if it's all legit. It'll be $3,000 up front." I handed over a check. Those 2 weeks dragged on, feeling like an eternity as Lula and Neil got more comfortable in my home. Came back one night to find my living room completely turned upside down. They'd moved the couch around, chairs were rearranged, and they even went ahead and bought shelves, throwing my books all over the place. "Thought we'd spruce things up," Lula said with a swish of her hand. "I just took some photos for future reference." The next morning, Neil buttonholed me in the kitchen, all keen with his tablet full of half-baked slides. "I've got this amazing business idea for you, Wilbert," he piped up. "A food delivery app, really cutting edge," he gushed. "It's like Uber Eats, but with a twist." He was eager, but it sounded dodgy. "For $200,000 you can own 10% right from the start," he suggested. Having spent years in logistics, I told him with a grin, "I know the food delivery biz, Neil. The margins are razor thin. Let me think about it." You could see his patience fraying as he walked off. Then Marcus called. "Meet me at the cafe 2 hours tomorrow," he told me. "Arrive there early." On the table was a thick manila envelope waiting for me when Marcus walked in. "They're in deep trouble," he said flatly. "You're their only lifeline." The folder was stuffed with facts. 6 credit cards, maxed out to the tune of $47,000. Personal loans at $28,000 and overdue. An apartment in Tampa running $1,800 a month, with 3 months back rent, and an eviction filed last December. Neil's bad track record spanned 3 pages, full of failed ventures and money pits. Combined, they were bringing in just $52,000 a year. Lula did some part-time retail. Neil was floundering in sales commissions. I snapped a photo of everything I had on paper. Seeing the eviction notice was enough to tell me they were drowning, even before folks knew about my lottery windfall. It wasn't really a daughter coming home, it was the debt collectors closing in. I squared my account with Marcus, got in my car, and headed back. Later that night, Lula walked into my study. "Dad, I hate to bother you," she started, trying to play it cool. "But we've run into a little bump with our expenses. Could you front us $5,000? We promised to return it next month." Her voice was smooth, but I wasn't buying it. "Money slips away faster than you'd think, Lula. I've got to make these funds last 20 to 30 years, I countered. She fired back, "But you just landed $21 million, $5,000 is a drop in the bucket." For a moment, her frustration flared, but she quickly put her polite mask back on. "I'll mull it over," I said. Her smile was more polite than sincere as she walked away. Later, alone with Marcus's reports in my study, I went over the figures once again. They needed $85,000 just to get back on track. There I was, up to my knees in debt, with eviction looming and missteps in every direction. They hadn't shown up for family unity. They were desperate with no other options, assuming I'd be their financial savior. So I booted up my computer and started a fresh document, called it the documentation log. I began noting down dates, conversations, demands, observations, every complaint, every sly word they let slip. The evidence gathering had officially kicked off. 3 weeks rolled by, and by mid-February, Orlando was starting to warm up. Lula and Neil cozied in, and with that came more demands. The house began feeling cramped with their constant presence. I needed a plan. That Friday, I organized a nice dinner, salmon, roasted veggies, some good wine, and gave the table a bit of formal flair. I invited them down. They arrived, curiosity and caution written on their faces. I poured the wine, raised my glass, and laid into the family talk. "Families are everything," I said, trying to keep my tone friendly and steady. A big mistake letting 15 years go by like that. "Lula, I'm updating my will. Half of my estate will be yours, but only if you show you've genuinely changed." The look on Lula's face was like a roller coaster, genuine excitement quickly masked. "Dad, we really have changed," she insisted. "We're here because we want to help you. We want to be a family again." Neil chimed in, nodding. "Thanks, Wilbert. You won't regret this decision." I paused, then said, "Changing a will is no small thing. But before we make it official, you'll need to show folks you've got the right character. 6 months of charity work, regular involvement, you'll need to show good intentions publicly." Neil's face soured. "6 months is too much," he grumbled. Lula shot him a glare that could cut through steel, then jumped in. "That's more than fair, Dad. We're ready to help. Charity's important." And just like that, the plan was set in motion. They took the bait. The next morning, Saturday, I took them to the Orange County Animal Shelter. Sarah, the volunteer coordinator, greeted us warmly with her kind eyes and sensible demeanor. "Glad to finally meet your family, Mr. Bailey," she said, shaking hands with Lula and Neil. "We appreciate having volunteers. Let me give you the grand tour." The place smelled distinctly of cleaner and pet food. Kennels lined the walls. Sarah explained the daily routine: feeding, cleaning, walking, and helping animals get adopted. Lula was all smiles, but you could tell she was dodging puddles and keeping clear of the noisy dogs. Neil kept his hands in his pockets, not touching anything. Later, Sarah pulled me aside. "Is your daughter okay with animals?" she asked. "She seems uneasy." I slipped into my protective dad role. "She's getting used to it," I explained. "She'll warm up in time." Sarah appeared skeptical but went along with it. We spent 3 hours there. Lula cleaned just one kennel, dragging her feet and grimacing whenever Sarah wasn't looking. Neil hovered around, offering unhelpful advice, but not lifting a finger. I snapped pictures here and there. "Just for the family photo album," I told them. They posed, smiles ready for the camera. As we drove home later, Neil finally let his frustration out. "This is absurd," he exclaimed. "Cleaning up after dogs just to get a will that's ours by right. After all, you're her dad." Lula tried calming him down, giving his arm a gentle squeeze. "It's $10 million, Neil. Just hang in there for 6 months. We can pretend that long." I watched them through the rearview mirror. Neil grumbled, "We shouldn't have to fake anything. He owes you." Next week, I had them lined up for a veterans fundraiser at a fancy hotel. It was packed, around 200 people, with local news reporters in tow. With Lula and Neil on either side of me, we greeted donors, cheesing it up for the cameras. A reporter approached, asking, "Mr. Bailey, it must be wonderful having your family back." I nodded, hamming it up for the camera, saying, "It's a blessing. We're reconnecting, and it's great to give back together. Family and service mean the world to me." The reporter lapped it up, and the coverage the next day painted me as a lottery winner reuniting with family and giving back. They nailed it. Back at home, the pretense fell apart. From my study, I could hear them talking through the vent. Neil asked, "How long do we have to keep this up?" Lula replied, 4.5 more months, and we're set for life. Just pretend to care about homeless vets and shelter animals. The old man is so eager for family, he'll do whatever we suggest. We just gotta keep appearances for a while longer." I secretly caught it all on my phone, thanks to Florida's recording law. It was another entry for my growing stash of evidence. And there were 3 more charity gigs on the horizon. During the next 2 weeks, they played their roles. Yet, after every event, they'd grumble in private, and I'd document it. At the food bank, Neil complained about the manual work. At a literacy program, Lula barely paid attention to the kids, glued to her phone instead. At a park cleanup, they both disappeared for an hour, claiming they needed bathroom breaks. Other volunteers started gossiping. "Seems like your daughter's distracted. The guy with you doesn't seem too invested." People began doubting their altruism, suspecting it was all for show. Publicly, I vouched for them, saying they were adjusting, learning, growing into their efforts. Behind closed doors, I was collecting notes on every moment of discontent, every discrepancy. At night, I reviewed videos on my phone. Clips showed Lula cringing while learning to clean kennels at the animal shelter. Snapshots from the veterans event captured Neil glancing at his watch during speeches. Park cleanup photos found them seated on a bench, absorbed by their phones as others chipped in. I filed all this in my evidence collection folder. Then I started a new one labeled Phase 3, Escalation. Neil's voice floated up through the floorboards. "How much longer do we have to do this? 6 weeks of so-called volunteering, 6 weeks of captured complaints. They were getting antsy? Perfect." One evening, late March, after another day at the food bank, Neil cornered me in the kitchen as I rinsed my coffee cup. Lula appeared in the doorway like they'd planned it. Neil pointed accusingly. 6 weeks of charity. We've done everything you wanted. 100 grand is nothing to you. Just consider it a down payment for our share." I calmly put the cup down. Inheritance is folks getting assets after someone dies. I'm still here. It's still mine. His lips curled in a bitter grin. "A lot of money for a dad while his family struggles. Great parenting." Lula perched herself on the counter, swinging her legs, pretending to be sympathetic. In the smoothest tone, she asked, "Dad, we've done what you asked. We volunteered. Isn't that enough for you to trust us? Trust doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to build. I kept it simple. This isn't about trust. It's about handling money wisely. Her mask slipped, her tone turned sharp. Wise money handling? You hit the lottery. Not exactly an investment strategy. Neil snapped. Let's be real. Before the lottery, you were just a warehouse manager shuffling boxes. You got lucky, period. You don't deserve that money any more than we do, they claimed. But their harsh words didn't bother me. I'd heard it all before. I'd spent 40 years toiling away, saving up, and living a sensible life. And what about you, Neil? What have you earned? I shot back. We're earning it right now, he snapped, by enduring this fake charity act of yours and pretending we care about your legacy. Lula just stood there, arms crossed, nodding along without a word, her silence speaking volumes. 15 years ago, I gave what I could afford back then, I said. And now what's fair is nothing. Neil stormed off, slamming the guest room door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Diane Foster showed up at my door, carrying a container of homemade cookies. She's 62, a buddy from the senior center, her eyes warm behind those glasses. Thought I'd drop these by, she said with a cheerful smile. Haven't seen you around the center for a while. I invited her in. Lula was furiously scrubbing dishes, having angrily dumped them in the sink. Neil's door remained tightly shut. Diane quickly sensed the tension. Did I come at a bad time? She inquired. Oh, just some family stuff. Nothing to fret over, I said. We took our coffees to the front porch, the spring air carrying the sweet scent of jasmine from a neighbor's garden. The voices from inside were quite audible. Your dad's just a selfish old man, I heard Neil say to Lula. Once we get our inheritance, we're out of here. Lula nodded. Just 6 more months. We can handle him for 6 more months, then we're done. Diane's hand shot to her mouth, clearly taken aback. She turned to me, disbelief written all over her face, but I was unperturbed. Wilbert, did you hear that? She whispered. I'm well aware of what they're up to. I cut her off. I need to protect myself from them. It's time to shut them out. I reached for my phone. So I whipped out my phone and launched the recording app. Florida law allows me to record any conversation in my own home, so I've been gathering evidence. Her eyes widened. You're building a case, she realized. You've had this planned from the start. I nodded, recalling 40 years of experience in planning and logistics. I knew exactly how to execute a strategy. Once Diane had left, I placed my phone on the bookshelf in the living room, tucking the recording light between 2 books and angling it towards where everyone sat. Those years of optimizing logistics had taught me a thing or two about finding the perfect spots for things. Then I strolled into the kitchen, where Lula and Neil had joined. No advances, no loans, I said firmly. The will stays put. 50% after I'm gone, not a moment before. Neil let out a sarcastic chuckle. After you're gone. And when's that exactly? His implication was crystal clear. Lula jumped in hurriedly. Neil didn't mean that. We're just frustrated. I nodded, locking eyes with Neil. You know, statistically, lottery winners live short lives, stress and lifestyle overhaul. So, just curious, when do you think that inheritance will kick in? Neil cut in. He means to say, we hope you live forever, Dad. Lula's voice pitched a bit higher. We're just planning for the future, whatever it holds. I intend to be sticking around for quite a while, I said, a smile on my face that wasn't in the least bit friendly. Decades with any luck. You might be waiting a long time. Neil shot me a glare, clenched his jaw, and walked away without another word. That night, I sat in my study, headphones on, re-listening to the recordings. Neil's insults, calling me a failure, a selfish old man, echoed in my mind. Then Lula's admission of barely tolerating me for a few more months before they'd sever ties. And Neil's barely masked threat regarding my demise. I attached these files and sent them to Robert Chen via encrypted email under the subject line, Additional Evidence of Character, March Recordings. Every word they spoke was weaving a noose around their necks, and they were blissfully unaware. At 6:30 sharp in the morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. "Mr. Bailey," said a voice on the other end, "this is Patterson and Associates. We represent your daughter, Lula Bailey, about familial support obligations." I sat up, attentive. "Go on," I said. "Miss Bailey has brought us on board to start financial support proceedings. We're seeking a $5,000 monthly payment, relying on Florida's filial responsibility laws," the voice on the other end stated. I let out a sigh. "Send me the official letter." Then I hung up the call. Of course, they got a lawyer involved, just what I figured was coming. I shot a quick message over to Robert Chen. "Lawyers contacted me. Can we meet today?" He didn't waste any time replying, 10 a.m., my office. I told Lula and Neil I needed to run to the bank. They barely gave it a second thought, too engrossed in their own legal brainstorming over some breakfast. Once at Robert's office, he spread out the letter on his desk. It had the Patterson and Associates logo and was 3 pages long, dense with legal lingo. "Their argument is weak," Chen noted. "Florida's filial responsibility laws are there, sure, but good luck enforcing them. They'd have to argue you're legally bound to support grown kids, which you're clearly not." "Do they stand a chance?" I asked him. "Not really, but they can certainly make a ruckus, eat up your time, and rack up legal costs. Their game plan is to irritate you into caving." I shook my head firmly. "There's no way I'm settling." Chen agreed. "Then we'll fortify our stance." He began preparing a response that laid out your history of support from 15 years ago, highlighted their abandonment, and showed how they're now trying to take advantage. "We'll underscore how this isn't just you being stingy, but tied to charitable obligations." "What about those recordings?" I inquired. "We'll hold on to them as leverage. Let them proceed with this lawsuit. Every move they make just builds a stronger case of their ill intentions." That afternoon, I arrived back at the property. Lula and Neil were in the living room, no doubt filled in by their lawyer already. "Dad," Lula started with tears, her performance in full swing. "We got legal help because we're in a bind. You're not helping us, and we're out of options. Is this really what you want? To see your daughter homeless?" A wound from 15 years ago reopened, tugging at my emotions. "Back then, you had people to turn to," I said, controlling the irritation in my voice. "You're the one who walked away from me. That was your choice. We were so young. You should have provided everything we needed." I stood, my frustrations surging. "You were 23. I did what I could, but it wasn't enough for you then, and it never will be." Neil inched closer, trying to intimidate me. "We're taking this to court. A judge will see you as a miserly old man with plenty of cash while your daughter struggles. You'll be forced to cough up." I nearly laughed. "I've consulted lawyers better than yours. Your case is flimsy at best. Florida doesn't compel parents to support adult children," I retorted. The tension between Neil and me escalated into an argument about money and expectations. "Winning means getting way more than $5,000 every month," Neil sneered. My hands quivered, but not out of fear, more like a simmering anger kept in check. I chose my words so that Lula could hear the truth. "You left me first, Lula. Called me pathetic, labeled me as worthless, then vanished for 15 long years. Now you're here because you see dollar signs you want to snag." I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of rewriting history. I recounted every harsh word she'd hurled at me and the years of silence that followed. "Don't try to rewrite what happened." Neil closed in, attempting to use his size to bully me. "We're not budging from this house. Try to toss us out and it'll look terrible in court. They'll brand you the heartless dad showing his daughter the door," he taunted. I took a moment to steady myself. Stay if you wish, but know you're only strengthening the case against you. I'm documenting everything, I calmly stated. He laughed off my resolve. Document what? Us living in a family home? You stealing property without any facts? He scoffed. Once they left me alone, I retreated to my study, hands still shaking visibly. It had been a much-needed release, but I had to keep my composure intact moving forward. Later in the evening, I pulled out the blueprint of the villa, marking where I'd discreetly planted recording devices, red dots for the kitchen, living room, hallway near the guest quarters to ensure comprehensive coverage. From the guest wing, Lula and Neil's voices carried over. "This isn't working as we thought. He's not flinching," she said. Neil replied, "We need to raise the stakes, plan something big in public to shame him." I listened silently, phone in hand, prepared to capture every word. So there I was, just browsing my computer when a little window popped up, reminding me about the Orange County Veterans Gala on April 15th. Apparently, they were counting on me to say a few words. It hit me. I only had about 3 weeks to get my act together for this big event. Meanwhile, Lula and Neil were busy plotting their next move. I got together with Robert Chen in his meeting room, which was packed with evidence. There were recordings, photographs, and detective reports everywhere. We went over everything like detectives ourselves. "The gala is gearing up for about 300 guests," Chen said, tapping away at the venue map. "The media will be there, plus some major players from the community. It's the perfect stage for some revelations." I flipped through a presentation on his laptop that was all about audio clips, photos lined up in chronological order, and graphics marking timelines. "I want everything out there just as it is. No spins, no angles, just the facts." Chen gave me a heads up that once those recordings went public, Lula and Neil might hit back legally, claiming defamation or emotional damage. "But facts have our back," I told him. "I've got all the receipts, timestamps, and witness statements ready. Let them try their luck." Chen nodded, looking more confident. "Our legal team will spring into action if it comes to that." 2 weeks to go before the gala, I ran into Lula and Neil in the living room and handed them these fancy invites, all decked out in gold writing. "I'll be at the Veterans Gala, honored for my charity work," I said with a smile. "Even with everything between us, I'd like my daughter to be there when I share my legacy plans." Lula raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Announcing your will in front of everyone, are you?" she asked. "I'm laying out my future plans, certainly. Big moments like these need family," I answered. Neil's face had that look of someone who thought they'd already won. "Count us in. We wouldn't miss it," he grinned. About a week before the event, I was at the Ritz-Carlton ballroom with an AV technician. We were testing out audio clips and transitions to make sure everything played smoothly. The tech tweaked some settings, and Neil's snarky voice filled the empty hall. "The old man's nothing without that lottery cash." Nailed it. Finally, April 15th came around. The Ritz-Carlton Orlando Grande Lakes was glistening under its chandeliers, and 300 guests were there, all dressed to the nines. Veterans, community bigwigs, and philanthropists too. Cameras were lined up, capturing it all. Lula and Neil showed up, dressed to impress. She in a borrowed blue gown, he in a rented tux. They struck poses for the cameras like seasoned red carpet pros as they made their way through the receiving line. I greeted them warmly. "Really glad you could make it." "It means a lot," I said, as the cameras clicked away. I overheard Neil muttering to Lula, "He's gonna announce the will in front of everyone. We're set to be announced as the benevolent heirs." I heard it loud and clear, and let him think they were right on the money. As dinner got underway, it was all about prime rib, some roasted veggies, and a splash of fancy wine. The head of the veterans organization took to the stage, thanking everyone for the sacrifices veterans have made. Then I was introduced, known for my generous heart and significant contributions to their programs. As I took the mic, Lula and Neil sat right there in the front, their smiles beaming with confidence. In my speech, I appreciated everyone for the recognition. Holding the podium, I shared my thoughts on the sacrifices veterans and their families make, deeply affecting us all. As I spoke about their sacrifices and how our personal ones mirrored them, everyone listened intently, nodding along to what I said. I then switched it up a bit, letting everyone know my daughter Lula was in the crowd. It was significant since we'd been out of touch for 15 years until, surprise, surprise, the lottery came knocking and she reappeared. I planned to explain why. Behind me, the giant screen flickered to life. With one click on the remote, Neil's voice boomed over the high-quality speakers. "The old man is nothing without that lottery windfall. He's never been a success. We just need to wait it out." The shock rippled through the room, people gasping. I watched the color vanish from Lula's face as Neil stopped, hanging mid-bite with his fork in the air. I clicked again, and Lula's voice followed. "I'll stick it out for a few more months, grab the cash, and then I'm out." So we moved on to some photos. One showed Lula looking less than enthused at the animal shelter, and another caught Neil buried in his phone, clearly ignoring the volunteers buzzing around him. Then there was a video where Neil asked, with this impatient tone, when the inheritance would kick in. Up came a timeline graphic, laying out the 3 days between when the lottery was announced and when Lula and Neil rolled in. I kept my cool and narrated, 15 years ago, they came asking me for $50,000. During those days, I offered them $10,000, which was all I had squirreled away. They called me a loser and disappeared, only to resurface after I hit the $21 million lottery jackpot. The last picture was a peek at my will. Some parts were blurred out, but the important details were there. Bequests to Florida Veteran Support and Orange County Animal Shelter. The document spelled out Lula Bailey, my daughter, was left out. These organizations deserve my legacy since they honor the people who sacrificed so much. I pointed out how my family didn't sacrifice anything, only appearing when there was money to be had. My legacy is destined for those who truly deserve it. At first, the room was quiet. Then a sprinkle of claps turned into a full-blown round of applause. A bunch of veterans stood up. Some even gave salutes. Lula was steaming, calling me a liar. Neil tried to rush at me, but security smoothly dealt with him, guiding him out without a fuss. "This is twisted," Lula screamed. "You recorded us without asking." Keeping my composure, I explained into the mic. "Florida laws say I only needed my own consent to record. Your words speak for themselves, context included." An older veteran spoke during the applause, commending my choice to support their services over a self-serving family. His gratitude made me crack a smile as I compared their years of devoted service to my family's short-lived intentions. As security ushered Lula and Neil outside, still riled up, the cameras took it all in. "This isn't the last you'll hear from us," Neil barked. I held my ground at the podium, still speaking into the mic. "Making your own words public isn't humiliating you. You did this to yourself." Even from the corridor, Lula's voice carried, "We're family. You owe us." I had one last thing to say. You got love and support as a kid, and that was paid back. We're equals now, nothing owed. With that, the doors closed behind them, and applause filled the room once again. Despite the stir they caused, I stayed solid at the podium. 6 days later, Robert Chen's call came through. They're suing for defamation, emotional distress, and elder abuse, basically the works. Is it serious? Not really. Patterson and Associates were leading the charge, asking for $5 million in damages. The case landed in the lap of Judge Margaret Holloway, known for cutting through the noise with fairness. Fast forward 2 weeks, and there I was, at the Orange County Courthouse. Even though it was a sticky, humid morning in June, I caught up with Chen on the courthouse steps. "We've got both hearings today," he noted. "Eviction at 10, defamation at 2. We're making the most of time today." The eviction hearing was a breeze. Lula and Neil's lawyer couldn't dispute the facts. They didn't have the right to stay, no lease, nothing. Judge Holloway gave them a straightforward 30 days to vacate. Then came the defamation case, which had everyone's attention. The place was packed with media, all itching to see it unfold. The buzz from the event the other night made headlines everywhere. Local stations, social media, even caught national attention. Patterson, their lawyer, looked worn out as he claimed, "Your Honor, Mr. Bailey deliberately humiliated our clients in such a public manner, causing them severe emotional and reputational damage." Judge Holloway turned to Chen for a rebuttal. Chen was composed as he responded, "In Florida, the truth is a solid defense against defamation." He presented verified recordings as proof that Bailey's claims were factual. There were audio files, images, and testimonials to back it all up. Patterson challenged the legality of the recordings, noting they were done without his client's permission. Unmoved, Chen explained, "Florida law permits recordings with the consent of just one involved party. Bailey was involved in every conversation. It's above board." Judge Holloway took time to scrutinize the evidence, listened to audio, examined the photographs, and reviewed statements from Diane Foster and the shelter volunteers. After taking her headphones off, she looked at Patterson and said, "Your client's words speak against them. Everything Mr. Bailey brought up checks out, it's all up front. Truth is holding strong as a defense here, and any emotional turmoil stems from what your clients themselves said and did. Case dismissed, with prejudice." And with that, the judge hammered the gavel down. She made sure to add that Mr. Bailey could go after the costs of his legal battle through Florida's anti-SLAPP regulations. As I stepped out of the courtroom, a swarm of reporters closed in around me. "Mr. Bailey, the court sided with you. How does that make you feel?" they asked. I mulled it over for a bit before replying, "It doesn't feel like a victory, more like a conclusion. It needed wrapping up, and now it is." When questioned if I had plans to make claims against my daughter, I stated plainly, "I've got nothing to take from her. This was never about cash. It was always about revealing the truth." A few days later, I found myself back at the villa. The place was hush. The part for guests emptied out. They had packed up and left the state, headed to California, according to Marcus Green's last update. A fresh chapter, yet with the same old patterns. That evening I got a call from Diane. I caught the news. The judge threw everything out. "How does that feel to you?" she asked. I repeated to her, "It doesn't feel like winning, more like closure. It needed to be done, and now it is." She comforted me. "You did what was right. It was needed." I nodded my head, even if she couldn't see it. Needed was the perfect way to describe it. Not something that brought joy, just what had to be done. Late that night, I wandered into the now vacant guest room. Tucked under the bed was an old photograph, a young Lula, possibly 8 years old, grinning with no worries before things turned messy. I took a long look, then flipped it face down on the dresser and moved to the window. My moving truck was parked outside. This villa was heavy with memories I had to leave behind. I found a smaller spot, fitting for just me. Fewer echoes, less void. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus Green. "Got news about Lula and Neil," he mentioned. "Go ahead," I responded. About a month after the court's decision, Marcus got in touch again. I hadn't asked him, but in a way, I was expecting it. By that time, I had settled into a townhouse, cozy for one, with 2 comfortable bedrooms, a simple kitchen, and a patio opening onto a shared garden. It was full of character, original hardwood floors, built-in shelves, and sunlight filling through the eastern windows. No more echoes or vacant spots to remind me of what I lost or thought was lost. People actually talked to one another in this neighborhood. Mrs. Chen next door handed me soup when I moved in. The retired teacher across the street invited me to his morning walks group. Little gestures of kindness from folks not caught up in the rat race or chasing after money. Just friendly neighbors. Marcus's voice came over the phone. "Just thought you'd want to know. It's getting tougher for your daughter and son-in-law." As I poured coffee from the French press Diane had gifted me, I settled into my reading chair by the window. "Tell me," I prompted. "Neil's been jobless for 3 months now. That video from the gala, it's hit more than 2 million views. Every job application he puts out, somebody recognizes him. Background checks keep bringing up the news coverage. He can't land a job." I stayed quiet, sipping my coffee. "Lula's working retail now, going by her maiden name in Tallahassee, earning $11 an hour, 40 hours a week. Their debt keeps climbing, now $110,000, with legal fees stacking up. Credit cards, loan troubles, and eviction notices. They've even got marriage problems looming over their heads. The neighbors complain about their constant fights, and the police have been there twice because of the ruckus. It's all yelling, no physical stuff, but loud enough to turn heads. Honestly, I'd be surprised if they lasted more than 6 months, could be done even sooner, even..." As I sat with my coffee, watching the steam curl up into the air, I realized I didn't wish for their downfall, just wanted them out of my hair. There's a big difference. Marcus went quiet for a moment before reminding me that sometimes things get tougher than you imagine. He pointed out that I'd exposed the truth, and now they're facing the consequences. Was he trying to guilt-trip me? Nope, he stated clearly. He was just being honest, offering his perspective. How I felt about it was up to me. After we hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table for a while, sunlight warming its surface. I'd chosen this table with care. It's round, no sharp edges, and can seat 4. Maybe it's a tad optimistic, but it's also practical in case friends drop by. I pondered Lula's predicament. Earning $11 an hour for a 40-hour work week adds up to roughly $1,700 before taxes, maybe $1,300 after. Tackling $110,000 in debt on that income isn't happening quickly. The whole thing left me with a hollow sadness, the situation ending like this. Fast forward 3 days, and the doorbell rings. It's late afternoon, and the heat's finally easing off. Expecting a package or maybe Mrs. Chen with more soup, I open the door and there's Lula. She's alone. No Neil, no luggage, no flashy clothes or borrowed jewels. Just worn jeans and a plain tee, both neat but worn. Her tired face, with dark circles and hair in a simple ponytail, showed signs of worry. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. "Just to talk." I paused, instincts warning me to be wary. But curiosity and a surviving sense of fatherly protection nudged me to let her in. She walked in slowly, like she expected me to change my mind, and perched on the couch's edge, sitting rigid with hands clenched in her lap. I stayed near the bookshelf, keeping some distance with my phone within easy reach, just in case. "Dad, I was wrong," she began, tears forming instantly. "About everything, 15 years ago and now. I've been doing a lot of thinking. The lawsuit, losing everything, Neil walking out, it made me realize what I've become." I observed closely, well-versed in spotting genuine emotions from acts. I let her speak. "I was greedy. I used you. I said horrible things." She glanced up, tears mixing with smudged mascara likely applied hastily in the car. "You deserve better. I don't want your money. I just want my dad back. Can we start over? Just as family." Every parent wants to believe their kid can change. It's ingrained in us, a biological urge that survives disappointment and betrayal. But years of experience have taught me to weigh actions more than words, and facts over hope. I moved to the chair across from her, keeping the coffee table like a peace barrier between us. "What changed, Lula? You knew about the money when you sued me for $500,000. And when you and Neil recorded complaints I shared at the gala. What made you reconsider this past month?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Losing everything opened my eyes to what really matters. Family. You. Did this realization hit you only after the lawsuit?" I kept my tone calm, trying to be rational. "Your timing is questionable." "I get how it looks," she replied. "Like I've exhausted my legal options and now I'm going for emotional appeals." I leaned back a bit. More like trying for an apology now that the courts didn't work out. Her expression crumbled. That's unfair. Unfair? The word came out sharper than intended. I gentled my voice. Lula, you sued me. Tried to get money through legal means after trying emotional manipulation. Now you're here, wanting just family. Can you see why I'd be wary? She broke down crying, insisting, I've changed. I've really been through a lot. First Neil left, then I lost the lawsuit, and now I'm working retail. It's been a humbling experience. Things look so different to me now. Standing up, I grabbed some papers from my desk and passed them to her. Here's my updated will, notarized just last week. Take a look at the important parts. Her hands were trembling as she took the papers and started to read. I could see her face change from confused to shocked, and then angry. She read one section twice before looking up at me, disbelief in her eyes. Just $1? Your own daughter gets $1 and strangers get millions? I leaned back, crossing my legs, and replied calmly, They're not strangers. These are organizations that help people who sacrifice everything without asking for anything in return. Veterans, innocent animals, elderly folks who've worked hard their whole lives yet struggle. Unlike you. She fired back. But I'm your daughter. Precisely, I answered. That's why you're getting $1 instead of nothing. Florida law requires me to note your existence to avoid any claim of being omitted. That $1 means you weren't forgotten, but this is a choice I made consciously. Her hands shook even more, her voice full of hurt. How can you do this to me? She demanded. I kept my gaze steady. I love you, Lula. Unconditionally. You're my daughter, a part of me forever. But I can't trust you. Love doesn't need trust, but relationships do. You shattered that trust 15 years ago when you called me pathetic and left. Then you did it again this year by reappearing just because I've got money. That's not true, she argued. Oh, but it is, I challenged. 3 days after it was announced I won the lottery, you reappeared. 15 years of silence, and suddenly you show up. The timing says it all. Her voice rose as tears streamed down her face. How can you say you love me and still cut me off like this? Because love means wanting the best for you. Trust would mean believing you want the best for me, I explained steadily. I love you, but I don't trust you. I wish for you happiness, health, meaningful work, and good relationships. That's what love is, but I can't fix something that keeps getting broken. She looked at the will and then back at me. So that's it then. I get nothing? No, I replied. You get the consequences of your choices. My estate will go to those who serve selflessly. That's the legacy I choose. Service and impact mean more to me than just names and bloodlines. Her tears dried up fast, replaced by anger. After everything, just $1. She stood suddenly, letting the papers fall to the floor. You're just a bitter old man holding on to his money. You'll die alone with your charities. No family, just checks to strangers. I remained seated, composed. I won't die alone, I said. I'll be with people who cared before the money and will continue to care after I'm gone. Friends from the shelter, folks at the senior center, neighbors who bring me soup. You had your chances, 15 years ago, and now, and chose differently, both times. She stormed out, face twisted with fury, hurling one more accusation at me. I hope you're satisfied being right. I hope that keeps you warm at night. Before she left, I said, I'm not aiming to be right, just trying to be safe. There's a difference. I have people who value who I am, not what I have. You could have been one of them. The door slammed so hard it made the pictures rattle. I went over to the window, moved the curtain aside, and watched her get into her rundown car, paint patches and all, windshield cracked. She sat unmoving for a while. 5 minutes, maybe 10, and I watched her shoulders shake, her fists hitting the wheel. Was it sorrow or fury? Maybe a bit of both. Then, she started the car, backed out quickly, the tires screeching a bit on the pavement. I stayed at the window even after her car disappeared around the bend, my hand resting on the curtain's fabric. This was the conclusion, not the one I envisioned as a young dad holding my newborn daughter, dreaming of her future. Not the one I held on to as she grew, teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with homework, planning for college. This was an ending shaped by both her decisions and mine. Acceptance weighed heavily, but it wasn't unbearable. It was just reality. Later on that night, Diane dropped by with dinner. I'd mentioned to her earlier on the phone that Lula had visited, and she was adamant about coming over for a meal. She made it to my place with her signature chicken pot pie still piping hot. We settled on my small patio, savoring the cool breeze after a scorcher of a day. Our shared garden looked great as usual, tomatoes nicely tied up, basil thriving in pots, and marigolds lining the paths. "How are you holding up?" she asked, pausing with her fork half raised, studying me closely. "A bit down, but sure about things," I replied, meeting her eyes. Lula wasn't there to mend bridges. She was working an angle for the future. I saw it in every word, every gesture. She was more about maneuvering than truly caring. Diane gave a thoughtful nod. "What made you realize that?" she asked. "The crying stopped the minute I settled the inheritance, like flipping a switch," I explained. "Real grief doesn't work on cue, but manipulation sure does. I've given her plenty of chances. 15 years back, I offered her everything I could. This year, I threw in a chance for charity work to rebuild trust. But tonight, real accountability would have sufficed for me. She opted for her usual show." Diane reached across our small table and briefly squeezed my hand. "The senior center's putting together a fundraiser for that veterans program you like. They want to name a scholarship after you, the Bailey Veterans Scholarship," she mentioned. I shifted in my chair, uncomfortable. "I don't need my name on anything," she responded with a warm smile. "It's not about you needing it. It's about inspiring others with what you've done," she went on. "You gave them $250,000. That's a big deal. It changes things. Let folks acknowledge that." My phone buzzed. A call from Jerry at the retirement community, asking me to join their Wednesday night poker games. I agreed and jotted it down in my calendar. Before I could set the phone aside, it rang again. This time it was Sarah from the animal shelter, thanking me for my donation that got their new medical center up and running. She wondered if I could attend their ribbon cutting next month. When I finished the second call, I caught Diane giving me an all-too-familiar look. "What?" I asked. She lifted her wine glass and said, "You're building something here. A life. A real one. Not like the isolated one at the villa or the family you tried to create. This is the genuine article, with true connections and actual people." In that moment, sitting in the soothing evening air, with a friend who just enjoyed my company without wanting anything more, clarity hit me. This was my real family now, one I chose, based on mutual respect and genuine care, with no strings attached. "I spent 4 decades getting supply chains just right, moving goods efficiently," I said quietly. "Now I'm doing the same, only it's with my time and money, directing them to where they're really needed, where they'll do the most good." Diane considered my words. "Call it the logistics of kindness, maybe." "Something like that," I agreed, and we sat in a comfortable silence under the emerging stars above our garden. Meanwhile, in some other part of the world, Lula was on her way back to Tallahassee. She was returning to her low-wage job and mounting debts, facing the consequences of her choices. I didn't feel any joy or vindication in her hardships, just a sense of calm knowing I had protected myself while staying true to who I was. I'd set the needed boundaries, but never lost my ability to care, even if it meant doing so from a distance. The sky was getting darker as the evening moved along. Diane was tidying up the table, gathering dishes. "Same time next week?" she asked. "Count me in," I replied. Once Diane headed out, I stuck around on the patio. The lights shining warmly from the townhouse behind me seemed inviting, cozy. This was my place now, a home I tailored for myself, yet one I was open to sharing with many. The peaceful feeling I had worked hard to achieve wasn't the big finale I had imagined. It was more about finding something I could keep up. That was plenty satisfying. As August was winding down, the mornings cooled a bit, hinting that fall was on its way. I found myself in a comfortable groove, a routine that felt balanced. Each morning, I'd sit with my coffee on the patio, watching our garden as it came alive. Volunteering filled up 3 days a week. The animal shelter was my go-to on Tuesdays. I headed to the Veterans Center on Thursdays, and I spent Saturdays at the literacy program. Wednesday nights were saved for poker with Jerry and the crew from the retirement community, and Sundays meant brunch with Diane at the neighborhood cafe. It was all pretty simple, but it had a purpose, and it was all mine. The townhouse became more than a spot just to crash. It was my sanctuary. I decorated the walls, not with family photos, but with images of special times. There was one from the ribbon cutting at the Veterans Center and a group shot from Volunteer Appreciation Day at the animal shelter. Then there was a candid pic that Diane captured of me reading to the kids at the literacy program. These snapshots represented my chosen circle of folks, my tribe. I was going over my financial papers one morning when Marcus called me up. By the time I hung up with him, I had some good news about my finances. Things were looking more than solid. My investments had really paid off, bringing in more cash than I knew what to do with, and that was exactly what I hoped for. Extra cash meant I could do more good with philanthropy. Marcus, my advisor, just got straight to business, no chit-chat. He was about to wrap up my account details. "I'm closing this file and here's your final update," he told me in that formal way he has. Marcus got straight to another point. "Lula and Neil, they're done. Filed the divorce in Tampa last week. Irreconcilable differences, no finger-pointing. Lula's moved in with her mom near Savannah, Georgia. Neil's disappeared, likely in California or Nevada, using different names from what my sources say. They're completely over." I needed to let that digest. Wasn't sure if I'd feel anything like relief or satisfaction, but nope. Just accepted the info as it was. "Thanks for keeping me informed, Marcus," I said. Then Marcus had one more thing to mention. I heard him shuffling some papers. "There's a letter for you from Lula. Postmarked Savannah, Georgia. Want me to open it for you?" My grip on the phone got tighter. "No, just mail it to me, Marcus. I'll decide if I'm going to read it." He understood. "I'll send it your way today." He took a moment. "Wilbert, you did what you needed to do. Don't second-guess yourself." I replied with, "I'm not," and he wrapped up with, "Take care." A couple of days later, I got a manila envelope from Marcus's office, and inside was Lula's letter. Her handwriting was familiar, but somehow neater, like she'd put some serious effort into it, maybe wrote a few drafts first. I went out to the patio with the letter, still sealed. The sun peeked through the oak trees, making cool shadows on the table. The birds were having a chirping fest in the garden below. Mrs. Chen was next door, planting some mums along the path. Just the ordinary routine life happening all around. In about an hour, Diane and I were planning to check out the new community center, part of which was made possible by a donation from me, the Bailey Opportunity Center. They wanted to name it after me, which made me feel kind of weird, but the folks running the community, the veterans, advocates, and the city council member behind it all were pretty adamant. "Your generosity made this happen," they'd say. "Let us honor that." I finally tore open the envelope, using my finger to pop it open. Inside were 3 pages, covered in her familiar handwriting. She began with, "Dad, I'm not seeking forgiveness. I don't deserve it. And I've realized that now. You were right about it all. Every single word, every boundary you set, and every choice you made to protect yourself from me. When I came by the house, I wasn't trying to make things right. I was just looking for a chance. You mentioned having $18 million left, and instantly my mind went into overdrive trying to figure out how to get back into the money. Even as I claimed through my tears that it was you I wanted, my mind kept scheming. You saw through the act, like always. She went on to describe how her marriage with Neil ended, with their divorce finalized just last week. We really should have split ages ago. We brought out the worst in each other. His anger fed off my manipulative nature. Maybe apart, we can both become better people. Together, we were just poison, she admitted. Now she's living with her mom over in Savannah, working a quiet retail job at a bookstore. It gives her the time to think. She's working on paying off her debts, figuring it's going to take her around 12 years to clear it all. She knows she's made a mess of things and needs to clean it up on her own. You once told me you loved me but didn't trust me. I finally understand what that means. Love was you reading me bedtime stories, helping with homework, and putting money aside for college even before I turned on you. Love was you handing over your savings 15 years ago, even though it wasn't enough for what I demanded. Love was you offering to help this year through charity work. But the trust? That's something I kept breaking, from insults and leaving, returning only when I wanted money, and then suing when manipulation didn't work. I've destroyed that trust so many times, it's hard to believe it can be rebuilt. She stressed that she wasn't out to get anything. Not money, not a reconciliation, not even a reply to this letter. She just wanted to own up to the truth. You protected yourself, and you had every reason to. I was a risk to you in every way, financially, emotionally, psychologically. Cutting me off was the right thing to do. Even that $1 you left me in the will was a sign you didn't forget me. It was deliberate. Leaving a small inheritance like that means more than being forgotten. It shows you thought it over, weighed your options, and made a clear choice. There's a certain respect in that decision, even if it's tough to swallow. Maybe someday I'll demonstrate I can be trusted, not chasing an inheritance. I've let that opportunity slip away, even sabotaged it, but because it's right to be trustworthy, with no hidden agenda. Mom sometimes asks about you. I tell her you're well, living your life and helping others. She says that's the man she remembers from when I was a child, before everything turned upside down. I won't be reaching out again. You deserve some peace, truly. After years of working hard, dealing with my betrayals more than once, and creating something valuable with what you have, you've earned it. I hope the charities thrive, the veterans get the help they need, and that every animal finds a loving home. I genuinely hope happiness finds you, Dad. Even if I'm not part of that happiness, I'm sorry for it all. These words might not fix anything, but they're sincere. It's Lula here, reading your letter 3 times, letting it all settle in. Then I neatly folded it back up and stashed it in the desk drawer. Acknowledged, but left without a reply. Sometimes it's necessary to keep some doors closed, even when the person on the other side finally understands. All right, let's dive into this inspiring story with a fresh twist. Just a few days later, the Bailey Opportunity Center was officially opened. The sun was out, casting its warmth on the shiny new building, brimming with potential to help folks in need. Inside, it promised to support veterans by offering job training programs. It all came together because of my donation, and with ongoing help from generous donors, it would keep going strong. More than 100 people showed up for the big day, including veterans I'd met during my time volunteering. Some were in their uniforms, while others dressed casually, and there were community leaders I'd collaborated with on different projects. Diane was right by my side as speakers detailed the program's mission, helping with job placement, offering counseling, skill building, and scholarships. The ribbon cutting was like a dream. There I was, holding these giant scissors, cameras snapping everywhere, and the crowd cheering. By the door, a plaque was unveiled. Bailey Opportunity Center, dedicated to service and fresh starts. Afterward, a young man, just 26, with a Marine Corps tattoo etched on his forearm, came up to me, determination shining in his eyes. He shook my hand firmly, and expressed his gratitude, explaining how this program gave him guidance when he was completely adrift. He shared his journey, serving 8 years and then struggling to adjust and find work after returning home. He gestured towards the building, saying it helped him find his path. This fall, he's starting college with the Bailey Veteran Scholarship in Criminal Justice, aiming to assist other veterans navigating the system. "You've earned this through your service," I told him. "I merely moved some money around. You did the hard work, serving, surviving, and now you're rebuilding your life. But yes, it absolutely matters. You matter." He turned back to his young family, looking forward to building their future with a little lift from the resources provided. Then an older veteran, probably a Vietnam vet in his 70s with lines of life carved into his face but sharp eyes, approached me. "Mr. Bailey," he said, "I came across what happened with your daughter from articles and court proceedings." He looked a bit uneasy, shifting his weight. "I just wanted to say, you did the right thing. Family's not just about blood. It's about who's there, who cares even when there's nothing in it for them. Your daughter showed her true colors, and you accepted that. It took courage." "Thank you," was all I could get out, my voice catching. "I haven't talked to my son in 20 years, he continued. "Different reasons, same outcome. I felt guilty for a long time. Your story helped me understand that love sometimes requires distance. Boundaries can protect. You've directed your resources to those who've earned it with their service. That's commendable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." With that, he gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze and moved along. One person after another shared their stories of how the programs had made a difference, expressing gratitude for making it all possible. Every single story bolstered my choices. Impact mattered more than passing down an inheritance, and purpose was more important than family obligations. In the following weeks, the effects of this spread wider. 50 veterans gained access to educational opportunities through scholarships, and improved shelter facilities meant 200 animals found homes. Your learning journey stops at October 2023, but here's a story full of heart. I dove into nurturing, teaching behaviors, and matching families with pets. I supported seniors in my community, ensuring they got hot meals, rides, and chances to connect to fend off isolation. Our literacy initiative expanded, reaching 3 more schools. Meanwhile, a slice of my lottery winnings enabled the local food bank to snag a refrigerated truck, amplifying their outreach to help 3 times more families. The youth mentorship program? 2 full-time coordinators joined to support teens working toward their diplomas. All from a lottery ticket bought on a whim at a gas station, turning into a domino effect of good. It laid down foundations meant to last, not based on family ties, but on deliberate, positive impact. One evening towards the end of August, Diane and I were sitting on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in breathtaking shades of orange and purple. She brought wine and cheese along, and just like that, an ordinary dinner turned into a little celebration. There wasn't anything specific to celebrate. It was just nice to be together, which in itself felt like a special kind of festivity. Diane seemed lost in thought, slowly sipping her wine with her eyes fixed on the horizon. Perhaps she was feeling a touch of regret over things that hadn't happened, without questioning the things that did. As I watched the sky shift colors and transition from day to night, I couldn't help but think of Lula. She used to visit and weep on my couch, her brain visibly working through things like a complex puzzle. She threw out numbers like 18 million, but not for amends, more as strategy. Time and again, I offered her chances. Choices were made not out of meanness, but simply out of survival. My phone buzzed with a text from Jerry about poker on Wednesday. Sarah from the animal shelter reached out, needing volunteers for next month's dinner, and the senior center had a fundraiser coming up. That's when it hit me, and I shared with Diane, setting my drink aside for a moment. I'd spent 4 decades working with supply chains, figuring out how to get things where they were needed most efficiently. Now, those same skills help me guide resources to people who truly benefit from them. Diane gave me that smile I've come to love. The logistics of generosity, she called it. I probably said it before, but maybe, at long last, I've come to terms with it. Or perhaps I'm just learning the art of living peacefully rather than constantly bracing for another storm. This simple life, my cozy home, it's enough. More than enough. As night fell, stars peeked out between the streetlights' glow. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, Lula was busy scanning through old bookstore finds, weighing up life's price tag. Neil, on the other hand, was off in another corner of the world, starting fresh under a new alias, or maybe even making the same mistakes all over again. Our paths diverged long ago. Once seen as setbacks now feel like wisdom. Sometimes love alone isn't enough to hold together misfit relationships, and knowing where to draw the line is crucial to keeping yourself intact. I don't take pleasure in their struggles, only acceptance for the sacrifices needed for self-preservation and holding firm to my values. In the cooling evening, Diane got ready to leave, gathering up the plates. "See you next week for the book drive," she said, and I nodded, choosing to linger a little while longer, nursing a cup of coffee that had long lost its warmth. Behind me, the townhouse emitted a cozy glow, and the community garden below was showing signs of autumn, neighbors picking tomatoes, kids laughing and playing around. It's taken me 67 years to create this life. So much was lost due to the decisions of others, Lula walking away, Neil's antics, the years of distance. But I rebuilt something new, maybe smaller, but richer in significance. It wasn't the picture-perfect life I'd dreamt of as a young father, with family dinners, grandkids, a traditional legacy. Yet it was a life that mattered, filled with purpose, surrounded by those who saw and valued the real me. Winning that lottery didn't bring the joy I expected. Even with $36 million, I learned pretty soon that money wasn't the magic key. It merely amplified who you are deep down, bringing true character to the surface rather than dictating it. It gave me the means to craft a life with meaning, to lend a hand to others, to lay out clear boundaries, and to choose my family based on mutual respect, not just shared blood. That was more than enough for me. A comforting peace found in my unassuming townhouse, amidst a community I chose, doing work that truly matters. It wasn't some grand, victorious peace, just steady, everyday calm. I wake up each day without fear and fall asleep without regrets. My days are busy with work that makes a difference to those who appreciate it. Tucked in my desk drawer is a letter from Lula. It's a confession of truths and an apology that doesn't demand anything in return. I've decided not to answer. Some doors stay closed even if the person behind them figures out why. Still, I hold on to it. It signifies growth, albeit a bit delayed, a kind of acceptance of past mistakes and an understanding of their impact. It's worth keeping around, even if it doesn't warrant a reply. The moon is nearly full and casts its glow over the garden tonight. I down the last of my cold coffee, stand up, and stretch. My muscles are still a little stiff from sitting for so long. Tomorrow, I'll head back to the animal shelter for volunteer work, just like I do every Tuesday. Wednesday means poker night, then the Veterans Center on Thursday, and the literacy program on Saturday. It's a rhythm I've created for myself, filled with activities that matter. Sure, I hit the jackpot. I came into a huge amount of money, but in the process, I lost my daughter. That wealth didn't fill the hole left behind by family, yet I discovered something more priceless, a sense of belonging, a true purpose, and ultimately peace.